Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Black Mom podcast, a safe space for women, mothers, and women who happen to be mothers who are all doing their very best to balance life and their mental health. A place to feel seen, be heard, and inspire someone along the way. We discuss our personal experiences to increase visibility, encourage vulnerability, and minimize the stigma surrounding mental health in our community. No two journeys will ever look alike, but we can still get through it together. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I know it's been a while. Don't hate me. But life has been lifing. But I am so happy to be here today. And I have a special guest in the studio, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is LaChastity. I prefer to go by Sunshine. It's a nickname that I've had since birth. So that's pretty much what everyone calls me. I am a nurse. I am a mother. I am a author. I am a mental health advocate. I'm also an event planner and host. I wear a lot of hats, and I'm definitely glad to be here today with you.
Awesome. So I'm going to first dive right on in because we're like mental health advocates all around over here. So, what made you step into that space to want to be a mental health advocate?
It's funny because it all started with a group that I created. Um, and I started this group pretty much on Facebook during a time that I was kind of in a depressive state. And I was just like, you know what? I need a group of people to be able to communicate with about whatever it is that I want to talk about, whether it's about religion, whether it's about politics, whether it's about sex, or whatever it is that I feel like is on my mind. I want to find me a place to where I'm comfortable being able to communicate what those things are and have people communicate back without judgment. So it all really started there with the group, and I named it Dear Black, and it was built around communicating with people of my culture. And so that kind of blew up. Again, it kind of grew into a social group. About 20 of us used to get together. And I think for me, I've never really been a fan of very big groups. So at a particular time, it was kind of hard balancing so many different personalities, so many different energies, and things like that. And at that time, I had booked a venue to have a birthday dinner, and right before my birthday, my niece's daughter was killed by her father, and it was a very hard time for our family. So, me celebrating my birthday became like one of the last things that I wanted to do. And so I had this space already booked, and I had put it off. And so I decided that since I already had paid for it, I said, well, let's utilize this space for the individuals in my group to meet up, and let's just sit down. Let's just talk about life. Let's talk about what we've gone through. Let's talk about, some of the issues that we might need to discuss so that we can be better humans for each other and for ourselves. Because an incident had occurred, and it was an argument between some of the members. And I remember one of the members calling me and say, like, during the argument, one of the members of the group had like reverted back into a corner. And I remember her telling me that she did that because being in a room when people were arguing and things like that, it triggered her back to childhood experiences. And so it kind of hit me that this is where arguments come about because we don't really know each other. We don't know how to communicate with each other. We don't know what each other triggers are. We don't know what each other have been through in their past. So that is where this idea came to utilize this space to come together for us to sit down and kind of discuss things that we had gone through. And the first meeting, it ended up being about me, and it was kind of like a life changing experience. I always describe it as an emotional exorcism because it was just kind of like really trying to separate that inner child from that place that she had stored herself in because she was so afraid of coming out. And so I realized so many things in that moment from my childhood had played a part in who I was in that very moment, sitting in that meeting with the overwhelming sensation of the emotions and everything that I was feeling. And I did not realize how hard it was during the process of healing, how to separate those things, because when you're hurt and you grow up in that hurt and you learn how to internalize it, it's very hard to identify what it looks like on the other side of releasing that, of
That is
forgiving that, of, saying, hey, I'm coming out of that pit. It's scary to say that that is what I'm going to do because I can't identify what that looks like. And so that is the reason why I explain it as an emotional exorcism, because it took a lot of energy to detach and say, hey, I am broken. I put up this facade all this time. I am literally not as strong as you all think I am. I do have issues. I have had problems. And so from that moment forward, which was, I think, October 3rd, 2021, I have just been so intrigued with the journey of healing and learning a different part of myself. More so just being 38 at that point in time when we had that first meeting, and almost feeling like at 38 I was born again, just really understanding what it felt like to be born again, to have a different change in mindset, to think different, to feel different, to experience life in a different um mindset. And so for me, the journey has been rewarding. Sometimes I want to kick myself in the butt because I'm just like, if I had known that all it took was for me to give a voice to it and say that I'm going to let it go and I'm truly going to give it to God and I'm truly going to relinquish the control that I had over that situation, until I realized that I was always trying to control something. I thought I was always up to me to make sure that this didn't happen to me or that didn't happen to me. But really, it wasn't. I just needed to give it to God and I just needed to trust Him to do what He said He was going to do. So I went from doubting Him to demanding Him to do what He said He would do. You said you'll fix it. You said I can give it to you. You said, lean out on my own understanding. So here I am, trusting in you and telling you to do all those things that you have told me you will do, you can do, and that you have done. And so that is what has led me to here. And my message is just always to keep encouraging people to understand that we have the key. We think so many times that we are bound to so many things, but we have the key because we have the option to consider it the worst thing in the world or turn it upside down and consider it a positive. We have the mindset to be able to change it.
perspective is everything.
A lot of people have not been introduced to that side of their brain. They haven't been introduced to the conqueror side of themselves. They haven't been introduced to the stronger sides of themselves. They haven't learned how to look at those weaknesses and know how to build on those during the process of what they're going through. So those are the things, like I say, that I've learned along the way that I'm very passionate about, spreading the word on those things. My pastor used to always tell us that once God bless you, you always need to reach back to help somebody else. So I definitely consider healing as a blessing that only He can do. And so I'm just always motivated to reach back and to inspire someone else that's on the journey, to let them know that you're not alone. And, I got you, God got you, and we're in this together.
You are so right. And that is perfect. We're just like in what is the word? We're synchronized because that's literally the whole purpose of why I started my nonprofit. It's why I started this podcast. It's why I did all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, you never realize how many people may be going through similar things, and you feel so alone and you feel isolated and you feel like nobody understands and nobody gets it until you actually have that moment where you're able to come together and actually be vulnerable. But I think for us, it's hard to do that in certain
Very, very
spaces
hard.
because we don't necessarily trust all of the environments. We're
Mhm.
not, allowed to be vulnerable as Black women in particular. We don't get to show that side of us.
Exactly.
We don't get to be human beings. We have to be superwoman and supermom all the time. And it's heavy. It's a really heavy load to carry.
Very.
And I think that not having certain resources is not because they're not available and not because they're not there. It's because we don't know where to look and we're afraid to
Yes.
ask.
Very, very afraid.
So
Um, I think after the first one, because like I said, this was just only supposed to be a one-time meeting. And the first one ended up being so powerful until my stepmom, she was like, you've got to continue doing this. And so as we continue to do it, you have more and more people coming in and feeling able to, release the things that what they had going on, to be comfortable with talking about those things, with acknowledging what, things have held them back. And so I remember at one point in time, there was a family that came, and and this mom did say that said and helped her and her kids more than going to, a therapy session. So it's things like that, those type of rewards that you get in return, that has literally continued to motivate me to have these meetings. So for about from 21 to 23. I host them every single month. And then we did it as a free event. We fed. So my group members would get together and we would put the money together amongst us to buy the food to, feed the participants that would come out. And it was just always something to look forward to, just because, when you're inside your mind and you think that I'm the only one who has gone through this, I'm the only one who has this story, and then you go and put yourself in a setting to where people are telling their stories, you get the chance to say, you know what, maybe I did not have it as bad as I thought. And definitely, if that person can push through that, I definitely can push through this. So every single meeting was just like another step forward to motivating me. So you know what, to keep going, because this is really breaking barriers. And I think that has been the most rewarding. Like I said, I've done this since 21. It's never been something that I've been paid to do. It's never been something that we've had people pay to do, to come and be a part of. But yet we try to, I always tell them that we're just trying to provide the platform for you to come in and really just be able to understand that you're not alone, to get those things off your chest, get the resources that you need to move forward. My dad has always been a part of it. He is a pastor, so he steps in from a spiritual standpoint and kind of give you those spiritual boost forward. So, understand that, like, hey, okay, if you don't understand it from a biblical standpoint as far as what you're going through, um, let me tell you a story. And so he ties it into, ties it in on a biblical standpoint. And then it just turns out to be this beautiful thing. You'll find that everyday conversations that people normally put limitations on, you find people going deeper into those conversations, and it does begin to break barriers, because when you stay on the surface level, you never really understand if someone knows what exactly you're talking about. Like, we've had these
Right.
meetings, um, like I said, since 21. And I think just this year, one of my members that has come to every single one of them just this year, we've got on the subject of, what does grace look like? What does it mean when you're
Mm.
giving grace? So we were able to talk about that. This is what grace looks like, and this is what it looks like when you're giving grace. This is what it looks like when you're receiving grace. And this is what can come about when grace is present in situations. So, like I said, you just never know. And you would think that, when we're throwing around grace and mercy, that people know what that is. A lot of people don't. They just only
What did you
heard.
guys come to? What conclusions did you come to, like, when you guys were talking about that in terms of grace? And were you looking at it from like a spiritual perspective, or was it just kind of like, generic give yourself grace type of conversation? And what conclusions did you guys come up to? What does that actually look like?
Um, for me, grace looks like a part of me, um, that I myself, if I had control of, you would never see. That's the part of
Hmm.
me that, when someone has hurt me so deep and I myself can't see forgiving them, grace does. And grace allows me to be able to swallow what they have done to me, knowing that I'm bigger than that. Grace allows me to come back and sit in rooms next to my enemies. Grace allows me to hold my head up in places and situations where other people would normally be shamed. So for me, that's what grace looks like. I think the hardest situation that I've gone through to date would probably be losing my niece. And the incident happened, it was between her and her brother. My nephew was playing around with the gun and dislodged and shot my niece in the face. You don't know, and I did not know what grace looked like until you have to ask God to step into a situation where because normally when you're going through something like that, somebody takes a family member from you, a loved one from you, you want to point
It's
fingers, you
outside.
want to blame, you want to have revenge. But I could not do that because not only was she my niece, he was my nephew. And they both were children. She was 14, he was 15. So although I do feel like this was a situation that um therefore, to me, that is when I realized what that looks like. What does that look like to still be able to embrace this child? What does it look like to still be able to show up for him? What does it look like to be able to swallow your hurt in a situation to still show up for your family? And that's what it looked like because I know had I not had grace, had I had not had mercy, I would have been full of hell, full of fury, full of anger, full of so many things that would have only torn my family apart even further. So some situations, yeah, you can have your way and you can go all out and do all these things, but it's just some situations that you just have to call grace in. And there was one situation I had to call grace into the room. It was one situation where I knew where I can call on the Lord's name as many times as I need, and I probably did call on him more times in that day than I've ever called on him because my soul craved him so much because I was so lost. And so for me, that is when I learned how to have grace. Grace is something that you just you got to call. It's like in those moments when you truly feel like it is nothing else I can do. That's what you call. And so I had to explain to her that when you are going back and you are forgiving people or you are communicating with people who you have said, I'll never have anything to say to you again. You hurt me so bad, I could never forgive you. I could never acknowledge you. And you're able to, that's great. That's what grace looks like. Grace is somebody understanding that you're a single mother. So instead of firing you when you come in to work late, they acknowledge that you're a single mother and they tell you to try your best to do better instead of reprimanding you and making your life a living hell. To me, that is what grace looks like. Grace is embracing a child who is having a trouble moment and not telling him that he's bad, but telling him that he's able. That's what grace looks like to me. So grace is showing up in those moments when everybody else will show up and demean someone. Is you showing up and being the light, you showing up and being the hope, you showing up and showing them that mercy is here. Because some people truly think that every day is a bad day. They think that
I'm so sorry for them.
yeah, they feel like everybody that they cross is bad people. And so, therefore, that's where I like to come in. I like to show them that, you know what? Everybody else thinks you're bad. Because I remember when my nephew was little, um, he was the only boy, and every time we would get together, they would always want to go with family members and stuff like that. So it was a lot of girls. So the girls would more so get the chance to go to other family members' house and stay the night. But he would always be rejected. They would always say,
Because
"Well, you
he's
can't
the
go, or
boy.
you too bad,
Yeah.
or you too this." And I knew that that broke him. And so when this situation happened, I think about all those moments where he probably felt abandoned, rejected, not good enough, bad. And I think that, did we put that stigma on him? Did we put that bad stigma on him? Did we speak that into who he was? Because
Right.
although,
They internalize those
yeah,
things. If
and
you
so
hear it enough, it becomes part of your
it
narrative.
becomes a part of them and they feel like that's what I have to live up to because this is what people see me as. This is what I have to live up to. It's just like how you see some people say, well, I wasn't cheating, but they kept on accusing me, so I went out and did it. Sometimes people are so weak minded, so they truly believe that, well, you know what? If that's what you're gonna put the title on me, that is what I'm gonna go out there and do. And so I don't think he was bad. Every time I had him, he was always respectable. He was always, TT, you want me to do this? TT, you want me to take care of that? I never had any issues with him. So what they saw, I did not see. So in that moment, I had to just see him as a kid who needed somebody to reach out to him, and even though it hurt, I mean, to my core to lose my niece. It hurt me to death, but I just could not internalize it as not having a forgiving heart. And what I did
Yeah.
was I told God, whatever you see fit, I will stand by that because I trust you that much. And so from then to now, my nephew has not been jailed. He has finished his high school. He graduated from high school. He went on to welding. He plays for a minor league football team. He works, traveling, doing welding and things like that. And so grace allows me to have peace with God's decision.
And grace too in an instance like that is, I think, with him being so young, right? Because imagine how everybody else is feeling. Imagine how he feels
Yes.
in that
Yes.
situation, right? Because that's not something that you would ever intend
Yeah.
to do. And to be in a situation like that, you showing him grace and everybody outside showing grace probably gave him the ability to give himself some grace
Yes.
and
Because
to
a lot of
find some
people
peace.
they will beat themselves up. And again, as a child, like I said, I wasn't there, you know. And grateful that I'm not, because my older niece, she had to be there. So that's something she has to live with. He has to live with. There was another child that was in the room. They have to live with it. And so I just choose not to have to live with it. I choose not to burden myself with feeling like what I think should happen should happen. So I don't even want that burden. So that's the reason why I told God, I don't want that. Whatever you see fit, whatever you think should be, then that is what I will go. I trust you with my whole heart. And so, therefore, looking at the situation and seeing that he's gone on to do good with his life and knowing my niece in the way that she loved, I truly believe that she would have forgave him. I truly believe that she would have wanted to see him succeed. So I can't hold any, malice in my heart. I choose grace in that situation because he still does need love. And he called me one day, he was upset and he said, TT, I know everybody hates me. And that broke my heart
Yeah.
because, I don't hate him. Do I wish the situation never happened? Of course. But I don't hate him because somewhere in the midst, I feel like we failed him. And had we done more, he could have done better. So no, whatever God see fit for, his life, then I trust God completely. Um, I love him. I still communicate, with him because again, like I say, he has to lay down and get up with it. And I can't imagine what
Every
that
day.
is for him. So indeed, that is a situation that if I can equip myself with grace and mercy, I'm going to equip myself with grace and mercy. And that is what I'm going to utilize to get me through and, to just stand in the midst of my family as well.
That's beautiful. Because a lot of people like face difficult things, and I know some people tend to stray away from their spirituality or religion or whatever it is that they believe in those moments because it is so hard. Like, how could this happen? Like, how was this allowed to happen? What do you do? And I think that creates a lot of turmoil for some people. So to be able to take a step back and adjust your perspective and lead from a place of love,
Mhm,
even though you're hurting, says a lot about who you are as a person.
mhm,
And I think that that's something that a lot of people can learn from. And more people should do things like that. They should lead with love instead of
mhm,
harping on the negative things. How do you feel that your relationship with God has helped you maintain a positive mental space in the midst of trials, anything. It could be something small. We go through things and you may be, down and out for whatever reason, even if it's relatively small. We can't really control how things make us feel. That doesn't mean that our feelings are wrong, but how we approach them and the tools that we use to get through them are important. So, what does that look like for you?
Um, for me, and I had to get here, and I had to go through a lot of things, and I had to, I think number one, sit down with myself. I had to sit down with myself, and I had to close myself up with God, and I had to just really just look at it and see, like, what are we doing here? Because number one, like, I know that you're the creator. So I've got to get myself in a space to where I don't think I know more than you do. I don't think that I know what's best for me more than you do. And that's where I was in the beginning. Like, I've always probably, we used to go to church a lot when I was younger, but I remember probably about teenage years, we didn't go to church as much. And I would go on my own. I was just very interested in, being a part of church and knowing about God and singing in the choir and stuff. And during that time, my grandmother, she got sick, and they had told us over the summertime that she was probably going to pass away. And then she actually did it, and she got better. And then all of a sudden, one day out of the blue, my mom called when I got out of school, and she's like, you need to come to your grandmother's house. They said her condition's worsened. She's not going to get better. And I remember in that moment, when I got there, she had said, was telling my mom to like stop trying to feed her ice. And so she was like, go on, Lisa May. And then that was the last words that she said. So from Thursday to Monday, my grandmother just, she has cirrhosis of the liver. So her liver had completely deteriorated. So she just sat there for Thursday to Monday, just literally drooling blood out of her mouth, wasn't talking. She didn't go to church. I don't even recall other than a picture seeing her go to church. Didn't really remember hearing her talk about God much. And I remember sitting at her bedside and thinking like, I don't want this to be my grandmother's end. Like, I don't want her to leave here um not right with God. And I remember getting the Bible and reading to her what they read to you, in church. You believe in your heart, Um I read that to her, and I remember I told her, I said, blink once, for no, blink twice for yes, or whatever the case may be. And when I finished reading and I told her to blink, she blinked for yes. And so, and then I continue it, then, by his stripes you're healed, and everything. And for me, that was everything, because I felt like, in those moments, we need to be able to trust that it's never too late. It's never too late for God to step in, to change situations around. And so just even doing it in that moment, I truly trusted him enough that he heard my prayer, and that although she had not lived the way she needed to live, that in that moment he had forgiven her, and that her blinks were enough to, get her into heaven. And so that was the beginning of it. And I remember that was kind of like our first heavy loss for our family. And even though we were young, I was probably about 15 or 16. I remember my friend coming in that night, and she told me that, you know what, sometimes God take people away from you because he wants you to depend on him, not them.
Mm.
And it blew my mind. But literally to this day, every single death that I have encountered with losing somebody that I love, I have been taught a lesson. Every single one. So I have chosen since that day to see, what is God trying to tell me? What can I get out of this loss? So even with losing my niece, I always tell people it was hard losing my niece, but when my niece left here, she was an organ donor. We were able to donate to 6 humans. So one life was able to help 6 other individuals. And also, when she was alive, I had talked about moving down to the coast in Mississippi. And I told her that if I ever went, I would take her with me. And it was just something about losing her that pushed me that now is the time. Like I came down here Mother's Day weekend that year. She was killed. She was actually shot on Good Friday that year, 2018. And I came the following month down here to the coast. And each Sunday when I would leave, I would go to the beach. And so I was at the beach and I could hear a voice say, "It's time." And in my head, I could see a road and there was a hand on the side of the road. And I kid you not, that vision stayed in my head every day until the day I moved here. Until the day I moved here. I was supposed to move here the year prior in that August. I had did applications. I took off work. I was supposed to leave that morning to come here for an interview. And again, I heard a voice kept telling me, now is not the time. Now is not the time. And I remember calling that lady about 9 o'clock and I told her, ma'am, I can't come. I said, something keeps telling me now is not the time and I have to trust my spirit. And I told her, I said, I can't come. And she said, well, I tell you what, you keep my information and when you decide to come, you call me and I'll give you, do your interview and hire you. But again, moving forward, I see now why it wasn't the time because God knew that this was going to come about for my family and I needed to be there for my family.
You needed to be there.
So
Yeah.
every time that I've needed to be in position for my family, I need to be in position for myself. He has led and directed me each and every time, even when I didn't know. There's sometimes he led and directed me, and I just now, over the past several years,
Realized
last
what it
4 years,
was.
realized that was him preparing me. So that is where I'm at right now. Those realizations have got me to a point now where I'm too afraid not to trust him. I'm too afraid to come talk to you thinking that you can help me before he can. So when I come to you, I've already talked to him now. I've already consulted with him. I've already trusted in what he says. And not only that, I tell people that now, opposed to asking God to go with me, I tell him to go before me. I want him to go into these spaces. I want him to make sure that the energy is right, that the people are right, that the conversation is going to be right. So that's where I am now, that I trust him so much that if I fill out thousands of applications to do interviews or to speak or do something like that, I trust him out of those thousands. He's going to put me in the room with the people that are going to make it happen. He's going to put me in the room with the one person, if it's only one person in that room that hears my story or hears what I have to say and it changes their life. And it can be 1,000 people. Then I know God sent me to that room for that one
For that
person
person.
amongst those 1,000. And my pastor used to always say that God will leave a flock to go and save one sheep, you know. So therefore, I'm just all for whatever he does. I believe that everything is by divine purpose. And that is the way I've, really just been looking at everything. So that's how I utilize him. One thing that I've learned and I love absolutely about him is that he loves me on my level. He laughs with me. He laughs at me. He communicates with me on levels that things that I understand. Like when I tell you, I pay attention to everything. I read his signs and everything. If the wind is blowing too hard, if it's, anything that he does, I pay attention to. I was telling someone, one of my last interviews I did, I was telling the lady that I have this door that I bought from Hobby Lobby, and I had this door, it's like a little wooden door you hang it on the wall, and I've had this door about 2 years, and I decided to hang it up in my bathroom. And so one morning I was stepping out of the shower and I looked over at the door and I heard God tell me, do you know that I can open up any door that I choose, but I'm willing to knock and see if you'll let me in? And I just almost wanted to slide down in the shower because that is just how patient he is. This man, he can kick in the door, he can open up the door, he can do whatever he wants this door, blow it off the hinges or whatever. But he's so patient. He'll stand on the outside and he'll just wait on us to need him. Uh, you want me to come in? Okay, not you. Okay. Shine, hey, I'm out here. You want me to come clean that up? Oh, you got it? Okay. So that's the way I see him talk to me. He talks to me, he laughs at me like, that's crazy. Oh, okay. So you think you know better than me? Oh, okay. So now it's about what you will do, not what I'll do. Okay. And so he's like my best friend. So when I think about him like my best friend, when I think about him as, he knows all things. I think about him in those ways, it gives me a peace that surpasses my understanding. So now I even know what that feels like. I understand what peace that surpasses my understanding feels like because I know that my understanding is going to have limitations on it. God doesn't.
Right.
It expands so far. So yeah, so that's how I utilize him. That's how I use my spirituality and everything that I do. I'm not afraid to be told no. Even when I went back October, I went and interviewed for an instructor job at the college, and normally they require an RN for the position that they were hiring for. Again, I put my little application in. I said, well, Lord, if you're going to do something, you're going to do something. If not,
Then
hey.
hey.
So I remember going to the interview, and I remember when I finished, the lady, she said, well, we've got a lot of people, to interview. So, we'll get back with you. Da, da, da. I told her right then, I said, ma'am, if you don't ever call me, this was a blessing enough because you didn't set this room up to be for me. I'm just the LPN. But God got me in here. Not because I
Mhm.
told him to go with me, because I told him to go before me. And if it's for me, then you'll do what you need to do. So even in my mind right now, I've been nursing for 13 years, but in my heart, what I want to do full time, I want to motivate, I want to be a motivator speaker. I want to, get full time into being an author. And I also love teaching. So that's what I want my livelihood to be based around. In my mind right now, I've already told myself that the job that I'm going to have, it doesn't exist right now. God is creating it because I know that He is going to, by divine purpose, put me in position where He desires me to be. So that is what I have lived off of for these past couple of years. And it is literally still what I'm living off of today. Um, Even when it comes down to my book. The book was
I
just
was
put
getting ready
out.
to ask you about your book. I was going to
Yeah.
say, so what led you to being an author? Tell us that story.
Well, I've always wrote since I was a little girl. I've wrote poems, I wrote songs, and I've done all of that. I've always loved to write. I've always kept diaries and things like that. Some I've even have now. I think I found one a couple of years ago, back from when I was 10. A lot of the things I wrote
Wow.
in there, they've come to pass. But when it came down to writing the book, because I'd always done short stories and things like that. And again, this happened around the same time that I started the group. I was just going through the motions. I was doing in-house nursing. So a lot of times my job was just sitting around. So I would take my computer and things like that and book. And so I remember one day I was thinking about, again, I was going through a depressive state, and I was just thinking about how we as humans go through so many emotions and they change from day to day. And we go into
Minute
places.
to minute.
Yeah, and we go into places and we're sitting amongst people who it could be 50 of us, and we could all be feeling 50 different emotions, or five of us could be feeling the same emotion. And so that is what first came into my mind when I was thinking about that. And I said, you know what? I want to write stories about what it looks like for these emotions to be exhibited in our everyday life. Because you might walk up to somebody and say, well, you look very anxious. And they're like, I don't look anxious. Or, like, what does anxious look like? How does anxious
Hmm.
look like in someone's everyday life? So that is what I got the concept of it. And I say, you know what? I'm gonna go from A to Z, and I'm gonna pick out different emotions and characteristics. And then I'm gonna write a story about each one of them. So that is how I came up with the idea on what I wanted to do for my book. And so I have Anxious Annie, I got Boastful Becky, I got Courageous Catherine, Faithful Fred, I've got Kind Hearted Kenny, Lonely Lisa, Misunderstood Marquita. So and it goes all the way up to Zealous Zoe. And so when I was writing these stories and I'm thinking about, all these different things going on in people's everyday lives, I also thought about, you know what? It really doesn't matter what you're going through or what I'm going through. God can assist you, God can assist me, and whatever it is that we're going through. So therefore, that prompted me to go and start putting scriptures into the story. And so at first I had the scriptures at the end of the stories, and I also had quotes, and I said, you know what? No, you need to go through your stories and you need to insert scriptures that align with that particular part of the story. So the book has you have the story, but you'll see that in the story you also have bold printed the scriptures. So I put the scriptures in the midst of the story. And so when I explain to people what my book details, I tell them it talks about these different emotions, but it also has scriptures in the midst of the story so that you can understand that at any point in your life, any point of your story, God can find his way in the midst. He doesn't have to wait to the end. He can show up in the middle. He can show up in the beginning. So that's the reason that what gave me the concept for inserting the scriptures into the actual story opposed to them reading the scriptures after the story. So you might be halfway through the story and then bam, there's a scripture that tells you at this moment in this story, if this is where you are, this is where you can find a scripture to call God in and save you at this point. Oh, okay, you don't want to acknowledge him at that point in your life? All right, go a little further, then bam, it's another scripture. So it really just kind of show people that there is no particular point. He can step in at any point. You don't have to wait until it's over. You'll hear some people say, well, I got to get myself together before I go before God. No, God said you can come, baby, when you a hot mess. Yeah, he'll tell you that
Come as you are.
you a hot mess, baby, but come on in here. So that's what made me love him, because he tells me, baby, today you a hot mess. Like he'll tell me, yeah, you didn't went too far. Come on over here and pray to me because you didn't went too far. And so I'm okay with him criticizing and correcting me in that way. So therefore, that allows me to keep that open communication with him and give myself grace to know that sometimes I'm gonna fumble, sometimes I'm gonna fall. Some days I am
Part of the
lost.
human experience.
Yeah, some days you're not gonna doubt him at all, and then some days you're gonna be like, "Hey, God, you remember? Hey, this part of the Bible. You remember you said you'll never leave nor forsaken me. Today it feels like you ain't here. Come on back." And so that's the type of relationship that I have with him, and that truly has sustained me in my mental health because it has allowed me to call on him on those days when I don't feel my best. Call on him on those days when I don't feel greater than myself. So that he can tell me that I'm more than just a conqueror, which means that, not only can you do it today, you can do it tomorrow too, because I'm going to give you courage to not only do it today, I'm going to give you courage to do it tomorrow. And so, although this book was wrote, it was wrote, like I said, in 2019. I finished it up in 2020. I had printed these pages out and I just have been carrying them in my work bag with me for the past several years. Um, when I met my girlfriend, I remember asking her, because I tried to get a couple of people. I'm just like, I've got this book that I wrote, and I kind of just want to get somebody to read it, just to tell me what they think about it. And so I remember I had mentioned it to her, and then it kind of just slipped my mind because I'm so used to people not showing up for me, not being dependable, not having someone I could depend on. So I kind of mentioned it and I went on. And then after about a week or two, she was like, okay, so are you going to send me the book? And I sent her the book, and what touched me was she read this book in one day. And when
Wow.
she called me, she was telling me about these different stories and she was asking me questions. And I was like, where'd you get that from? She was like, in your book. And then she read something out of there, and I was like, that's deep. And she was like, you wrote it. So I literally had forgot what I wrote. So when I went back and read it myself, I was like, wow, that is crazy that even back then I wasn't even trusting God like I am now. And he sat me down and made me write this book in 2019 for 2024. And it's so crazy when she read it. She had a roommate at the time, and there's a story called Evolving Eric. And so she allowed him to read the story because his name is Eric. And she called me and she says, I just let my roommate read the story involving Eric. And he said, how does she know me? How does she know my story? So I've had so many people reach out.
That message was meant for you, sir.
Yeah, I've had people reach out to me and ask me, are these true stories? Are these real people? And some of them are. Some of them are based on, my depiction of characteristics that some of my family members and friends have. So, like, Courageous Catherine is my grandmother. Faithful Fred is my grandfather. Kind-hearted Kenny is my cousin. Lonely Lisa and Misunderstood Marquita is my stories. Selfish Chantrell is my brother. Victorious Victor is my cousin, because during the time right before I lost my niece, is crazy. This happened in March. My aunt passed away March 10th of 2010. And March 20th of 2018, she had two sons, and her oldest son had taken in her younger son. Well, they had gotten into a domestic back and forth or whatever. And anyways, one of them shot the other one. This was March 20th. And then 10 days later, March 30th, is when my nephew shot my niece.
Ugh.
So it was like those 10s, I was like, okay, this is something. God is saying something. So again, I always tell people, although losing my niece was the hardest thing that I've ever had to experience, she gave me a reason to live. She gave me that what you want to do, you got to do it now. There is no time to waste. When I had to see my 14-year-old niece lowered in that ground, I knew nobody's safe.
No.
Nobody is safe when it comes down to death. Nobody is safe when it
And you
comes
never
down.
know when it's
Yeah.
going to come. You never know when your time is. You don't know how much time you have left. So
You have no time. So in that moment, from her being her passing away, I think that happened at the end of March. By the end of May, I had moved. I was like, I'm no longer, I'm not making any more
it's time to
excuses.
go.
Yeah, I'm not making any more excuses to stay here. So I truly believe that had that situation not happened, I could possibly still be in my hometown. Still making excuses. I was dating someone at the time that was like, well, I don't want to leave until my son graduates. And about 2 weeks after my niece passed, even that relationship fell apart. So I just think that had these sequence of things not taken place, I would not have seen where my greater was. I would not have seen where I needed to be, how these things were going to unfold for me. So it definitely takes relinquishing the control that you want over situations, telling God that I truly trust you, and then standing on it, because he'll test you. He will definitely test you and see if you're about what you say. So I'm very careful on the things that I say, because I know that he will test me. I know that he will check me out to see if um what I say can be validated. And so again, that has just been a very pivotal thing in my healing, is that, him asking me, because he told me one day when I was driving, he said, baby, I was there when you were going through that, and I brought you out. That's the reason why you're not there anymore. So every time you go back to that hurt, that's you. That's not me. I've done my job. He said, I bring you out. We get to a certain point. You stop. I stop. You run back. And then when you get back and it don't go where you want
You
me to
come
come
back.
back and get you. And so when he told me that, I was like, oh my God. Now I'm looking at it like, yeah, you really looking real crazy to God right now. You looking real, real crazy. Over here talking about,
That's
Lord,
a
help me. But yet you still running back to it. And so, again,
that's a great way
yeah.
to look at that.
So the chain breaker, like I say, the chain breaker luncheons that we host, my dad used to always do demonstrations, because again, a lot of people may not get it with us just communicating. Some things that we're communicating with, you'll get right off bat. Some people have to be shown what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So this was something that I was not getting. I had to be shown. So I remember one day in the meeting, the guy kept saying, nobody understands what I'm going through. Nobody understands. Nobody, or why is it that I just can't let it go? Da, da, da. So my dad put a cup down on the ground and he said, the reason why you can't let it go, he said, because this is the situation. He said, and you walk away from the situation and then you run back because you feel like you left something. And then you walk away from it again and you run back because you feel like you left something. He said, what you left in the situation was your heart. And you can't leave a situation if you don't take your heart out of it. And that was so profound to me. And I just asked myself, can a man live without his heart? Wherever your heart is, you're going to be also. So if you got your heart invested in a relationship, you got your heart invested in a job, you got your heart invested in misery, you got your heart invested in depression,
It's going to be
then
impossible for you to move forward.
it is going to be impossible because the moment you get away from it, you're going to feel like you can't breathe. I got to go back. I'm going to die without this. And sometimes we get so comfortable even in misery because we know how to cope with it. We know that, hey, when we feeling miserable, we're going to go home. We're going to get our ice cream. We're going to get in the bed. We're going to sleep for 3 days. So we already prepared to keep running this same routine back. So when somebody is telling us, you know that instead of going home and getting in the bed, we can go sit at the park.
Yeah, go for a walk.
People at the park. I might start crying. It could mess up my allergies. No, I'm safer at home under my sheets where I know ain't no allergies and pollen. So sometimes we become so comfortable when we are stuck, so we will refuse to go out there and look for the better options. And so recently in October we started doing the chain breaker luncheons online. And they said something in the first chain breaker luncheon that I just cannot unhear. One of the ladies explained going through the chain breaker lunches and going through the healing process is something that she said once you see something, it's like you can't unsee it. So once I see the trauma that I was causing myself, I can't unsee that. And that is what pushes me to keep going forward because I know what that trauma looks like and it's undeniable. I cannot unsee what it did to me. And so that is what pushes me because when you know how something hurts you, when you know how something breaks you down, when you know what something takes away from you, then that's when you know better, you do better comes in. Oh, I know this gonna cost me 5 pounds because I'm not gonna eat for 4 days. Then I'm gonna be sick. It's gonna take me another 2 days to start back eating. Or okay, I know that this situation gonna hurt me. I'm gonna cry for 5 days. So I'm probably gonna lose 3 days worth of work because I'm gonna call out. When you start looking at the losses that you are taking and that you are deliberately choosing to take, and then you decide that that's shenanigans. Like this is too crazy.
I don't want
You
no
decide,
parts.
yeah, you say I don't want no more parts of that. That is the moment when you push yourself to see something different, even when you don't know what it looks like, even when you don't know where you might land. You're just knowing that you know what, if I could stand in this mess, I know I can stand in something else. So let me just keep moving forward. So let me see how it's going to turn out. And for me, it has turned out great. Letting go.
The only way out is through.
Yes, letting go, letting God has been the best thing. One of my members came into the chat. We used to have a chat and we would get into the chat every single day. And every single day he would say these 3 words and they became so profound to me. He would tell us every day, trust the process. And when he used to say it in the beginning, I was just like, okay, trust the process.
It's one of those things like, okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay,
Like I hear you.
trust the
It
process.
sounds good.
I'm just like, this damn process is too much. Okay, can I get a process that requires less hurt, less agony, less stress, less depression? That's the process that I want to be in. But then, when I started going through these chain breaker luncheons, hearing how they were changing lives, I knew I could not go around this process. I
You
had
got
to
to go
go
through it.
through the process because I told myself, like, how am I going to speak life to somebody else and I won't allow it to be spoken to me? How am I going to tell somebody else that you need to heal and then I'm trying to avoid healing? So I realized that everything that I wanted to go forth and be a mentor towards or advocate for, I had to go through the process because I needed to know what it looks like. So
Yeah.
now when I
And
have
it's like people say it all the time. They're like, "Oh, your greatest accomplishments are on the other side of fear," or like you have to go through it in order to, like, the light at the end of the tunnel. You may not see it right now, but that doesn't mean that it's not
Yeah.
there. And it sounds crazy in the moment when you're in the midst of that dark space, right? Like, it's dark, I can't see nothing, I don't know what's going on, like everything just feels out of order, and you have to dig deep and have faith
Yeah.
that it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
But being on the other side of it changes your perspective.
Mhm.
Whereas when you're in it, you don't see that.
Yep. You
You don't see
absolutely
it.
absolutely do not. And it's just like, um, when I moved here, since I moved here, a lot of my patients that I took care of here in house, they've been nonverbal. And so now that I'm teaching, CNAs, I tell them, when you come across a patient that's nonverbal, what is your best way to communicate with them? Your best way to communicate with them is going to be spiritually. You have to really see them. You have to really look at them. You really have to feel their
You
emotions. You
have to
really have to,
connect.
yeah, you have to find a way to connect. And so that is the same in the process. You have to be able to connect to those emotions. You have to be comfortable with feeling those emotions. You have to be able to trust it. And so again, going through those situations is what taught me about where it says to walk by faith and not by sight, just because of what you just said. When you're in that dark place and you can't see, you got to feel your way through. You got to trust your spirit. You got to trust the unknown. You have to tell yourself that the light is coming somewhere. So that is what he means. When you can't see nothing around you, trust your spirit. Trust me. And so that became very, powerful for me when I really realized, okay, this is what it means when it says walk by faith, that it's going to get dark. He knew that. That's why he told you walk by faith, because it's going to be some times it's going to get dark. There is going to be no light, but I'll be at the end of the tunnel. But will you keep walking? That is the key. Will you keep walking? Are you going to sit
Yeah.
down in the middle of the room and just scream and hope that somebody turn on the light, hope somebody save you?
You got to keep
So
moving.
you have to keep moving. I told him one day, there was some stuff going on, and I said, you know what? I was thinking to myself, I'm boasting. I'm like, you know what? My God, bigger than this. And I remember I said, you know what, Lord, I will go through the wilderness to get to you if I got to, even if I got to go by myself. Baby, the next couple of days, the week got hard. It got tough. And I remember I ran back to that same couch and was about to lay down in the same area where I told him just a week ago that I'd go through the wilderness with him. When I got ready to lay down on my couch and turn over as to bury my face like I'm just so distraught, he told me, wait a minute. But I thought you
What you
said
said? You forgot what you said already?
yeah. He said, I thought you said you would go through the wilderness for me. When he told me that, I got on up off that couch, fixed my attitude, and went on about my day. I said, see, now you showing out. Now you didn't told him you go through the wilderness. As soon as you got to the tree line, you didn't start crying. You ain't even stepped into the woods yet. You ain't even believed that there is a path I already know. You don't even know Hansel and Gretel might be the left you breadcrumbs to get through here. You already crying. As soon as you seen the woods, you start crying. So again, those are things that I keep in my mind. I keep telling myself that this is our relationship that we have and how we communicate with each other. And this is how I get through my tough moments.
That is beautiful. So I want to ask,
Becky, you trying to ask?
what would you say? What advice or words of wisdom would you give to someone whose faith is wavering, not necessarily, or they don't necessarily have that relationship that you have with God? Because everybody doesn't. Some people believe, some people don't, whatever the case may be. And I know in terms of mental health, there's always a lot of dissonance when it comes to clinical, like psychology and like therapy and
Mhm.
the spiritual side of it. They kind of clash sometimes,
Mhm.
where people don't really find the medium in between them because they really overlap if you
Mhm.
really think about it. But everyone doesn't see it that way. So what would you say to someone who's in a space where they're not really sure which direction to go. And I know some people are like, oh, you can't pray it away, but it kind of helps if you do.
Mhm.
What would you say to someone who's in that space of uncertainty where they're not really sure of their faith specifically? They may not have that same conviction that you do,
Mhm.
but they're in a space or they're in a time that's dark and they're looking for the light and they don't necessarily know where to find it. What would you say to them?
Um, for me, I love to hear people's story. And then before I give advice, I like to always ask them questions that allow them to speak into their truth about how they see a situation. And so, therefore, once I start giving them advice, I'm going based off how they see things, based off the way that they have told me. So, I guess if I could think of an example, I remember my cousin. She was trying to find housing, and so she was in a place of kind of like she's kind of like the type of person that where if she gets into a place and she's not comfortable, she wants the situation to change right then. And then if it doesn't, it's kind of like she feels overwhelmed. She feels like she's been let down. She feels like, God is not hearing what she's been praying for. And so therefore, if things don't transpire as she see fit, she's kind of ready to quickly move on to the next thing. So I remember one day she visited me and she was kind of like down and out and she was just like, I'm tired. I've been looking for housing. I can't find it. I'm thinking about just up and leaving here and going somewhere else or whatever. And so he started talking to me right then and he told me to tell her, what can I do for you if you keep running?
Mm.
Like before I can even step my feet in here to fix something for you,
You already,
you leave that situation. So therefore, how can you tell me to help if you keep running when I'm trying to? So I tried to put it in a retrospect that when you're going through dark times, right? And your faith is wavering. First of all, you need to number one, I think it's Haggai 1 and 5. Uh, consider your ways. Consider your ways. So now let's consider our ways, and then we're in this dark space where we have told ourselves that things are not going to get better. If we consider our ways in that moment, we have told ourselves things are not going to get better. So if you tell yourself things are not going to get better, are you ever going to get up and do something productive that will help things get better? No. Why?
because
Because
you
you
already
believe
believe it's not going to get
what
better.
you have told yourself. So now let's say, okay, we've told ourselves things are not going to get better, but now we're questioning our faith. All right. If you believe in your faith and you believe and you trust in God, you know that He can do all things because He has the power and the ability to do so. So now, when we think in a retrospect of thinking that God has left us, that He has forsaken us, when we think about it, we have to now ask ourselves, did we truly trust Him? Did we really ask Him? Do we really believe Him? Because if we don't believe Him, there is no reason for us to be sitting here in this dark pit waiting on Him to show up because He's not coming nowhere that a person don't believe He can do nothing in. You've already told Him, look, my problem's so bad you can't do nothing over here. So that's the reason why the weeping keeps lasting. It lasts longer than one night. It lasts 2 nights because instead of having faith, you got doubt, and you've allowed your doubt to be higher, be greater than your faith. So I always like to ask people, first of all, you gotta ask yourself, do you believe? Do you believe your situation can get better? And also, what does it look like for you to have a better situation? One of my friends used to complain all the time about not feeling loved or appreciated or whatever. So I asked one day, what does it look like for you to be loved properly? He said, I don't know.
Well,
How
you need to figure that out.
how can you complain? How can we argue with someone that they're not loving us appropriately if
If you
we don't
can't tell
even
them how
know
to.
what that looks like?
Yeah.
So that situation taught me that I cannot go out here and ask someone to do and to be and to give to me what I'm not willing to give of myself. You know? So if I want God to believe in me, I need to believe in me. Because when I believe in me, I'm going to believe that God can instill in me all the strength that I need, and I'm going to have the ability to overcome these things. So that's the reason why I'm so strong on mental health. I love God with everything in me. I really do. But I'm very strong on addressing the mental health just because when people don't believe, you can talk about God all you want. It flies over their head. It goes over here, over there. It goes everywhere except in here and in here. But when you break into the mindset and you break those barriers that have been built up that say, hey, you by yourself, nobody loves you, nobody's coming to your rescue, you're not
All of your
worthy.
trauma that's been built up
Yeah,
that hasn't been addressed.
yes, when you tell yourself that, you don't believe. And then that's when you get those suicidal thoughts. That's when you get the nothing is going to get better than this. So a thing that I utilize when I get to that point is, what if I give up today and my breakthrough arrives tomorrow? Just what if?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
I've heard stories.
Things can change in an instant and you
It can
never know.
change in an instance. You'll listen to some stories. I think one time I heard a teenager had killed themselves, and I think they said the next day they got letters in the mail where they had been accepted into a college. You know, people have not lost jobs, killed themselves, and the next day someone called to offer them a job. So what if we give up today? What if God got our shipment, our breakthrough shipment on the way? It's
It's in the mail.
delayed. It's delayed, but we think we've
FedEx
been
lost the
denied.
package. It's coming.
Yeah, we think we've been denied because it haven't arrived yet. And so we give up. We don't even check the notifications. So we didn't went in here and we didn't just gave up. And then when our family come here to pick up the remnants of what's left of us, they check our email, and in our email, an hour before we took our life, it said your package is delayed but will arrive by 9.
Mhm.
So sometimes,
That's very powerful.
yeah, so sometimes you got to check your notifications. You got to really understand that even though it say weeping may endure a night, endure for a night, we don't know how many nights. Joy may come in the morning, but nobody guarantees that it's going to be tomorrow morning. So you have to get comfortable knowing that, you know what, even if I weep 5 days, I know joy will eventually come. Joy,
Like you said, the
joy,
mental health part of it is important too, because changing your perspective instead of wallowing in it,
yes,
look for the lessons. What are you supposed to be learning? What is this teaching you? What can you take away from this experience? How can this experience make you better?
yes,
Instead of just focusing on the fact that everything is miserable and I'm miserable, and it's, even though it's hard in
it's
those
very
moments,
hard.
but it takes doing the work
Yes, it's very
to
hard
be able to shift your perspective when
because
you
some
need
people
to.
think they're like being punished. I remember one of my friend guys, he was just like, not only was he thinking other people were punishing him, he was punishing himself. Like in his mind, he felt like he needed to endure certain things to level the playing field of the things that he had done wrong. Not understanding that you can just simply go and apologize. I remember I told him one time, listen, if you feel that way, then call the people who you feel like you wrong and tell them that you're sorry and tell them what you're sorry for. But when you do that, do not go into the conversation with expectations of being forgiven. Do not go into the conversation with expectations of what needs to be said back to make you feel somewhere. Only go into the conversation with the expectation to get off your chest your truth and to leave it where it's at. You're not responsible for anything else past it. You're not responsible if they forgive you. You're not responsible for the way they react past that. You're responsible for your part, and your part is just simply releasing it, forgiving them, forgiving yourself, and allowing grace and mercy. Go back to that grace.
To move forward.
Some people will not give themselves grace to release themselves from these things. They'll think, well, back in the day, I was this and I was that, and I got to still live in that. No. I told God, when I realized I had to be in the midst of a lot of individuals, this is what I told God. I said, because at first it made me very uncomfortable. I didn't want to have so much weight on myself as far as planning these meetings, being responsible or feeling responsible for all these individual emotions, because it would get heavy at times. People were dealing with very deeply rooted emotions. And so I remember several times I was trying to beg out of having the chain breaker luncheon. And my dad came in one time and he was like, yep. He's like, I can feel it in my spirit. I know what you're trying to do, but nope, you're not going to do it. You're going to keep going. And so when I realized that this was my assignment, this is what God was preparing me for, I then knew that all those things that I went through in my life, they were not in vain. They hurt, but they were for a purpose. My daddy told me one day, because I went to his house, I was crying about a situation. My daddy looked at me, he said, baby, everything you go through in your life is not for you. I said, what you mean? So I'm supposed to feel this hurt for somebody else? He said, yeah. So that later on in life, you might run across somebody that's feeling the same hurt, and you're going to be the one to teach them how to get through. And I was like, wow. So now everything that I've gone through, it no longer hinders me in my thoughts. It no longer hangs over me as a weight. I'm grateful for it because I know that just that situation could save somebody else's life. It can keep somebody else from going through it. It can bring somebody else out just for the mere fact that God seen me through, that he showed me a better way. And now I can tell somebody else that, yeah, girl, I was in an abusive relationship as well, but I made it. I decided to fight, not fight to stay in the relationship, to fight to get out of it. Because if I got to fight, I might as well fight to get out
For
instead of
me.
fight to stay in. So that's how I flipped that situation around. I'm like, oh, okay, they want to fight. Well, if I got to fight to stay in this, I'm going to fight to get out. I refuse to allow my mom to close the casket down on me, knowing that a man put me there. So, all those different situations now, when I look back on them, they all now were lessons. They were all now trials and tribulations that I had to go through to be on my resume now when I go and tell people, hey, I'm an advocate for mental health. Well, what you been through? Well, I've been through this. Yes, baby, it was hard. I had to slide down the wall a lot of times like Mary J. Blige. I didn't roll around on the floor like stop, drop, and roll. I've done all those. So now when I start my meetings and I have someone new on there, I tell them, this is not going to be no easy process. This is not going to be no sip, you know what I'm saying? This is not a sip and paint. This going to be some cry and heal. These are things that are going to hurt, but I promise you, if you stay the course, if you have faith, if you still keep walking, because guess what? If a blind man can do it, why can't we? Blind people
There's
aren't
no reason.
they aren't born and then die. They learn how to maneuver through the dark in the silence. They learn how to live. And that's the same thing that we have to do when we are in our dark moments. Think about those blind people that are finding a way. Finding a way when it's an uphill battle. Finding a way when they got to step down into situations. Finding a way when they got to navigate the room when it's a lot of space. Finding a way when it's tight. They are finding a way. So I look at that and compare it to healing, and I'm just like, you know what? Find a way. You gotta find a way. If I can find a
Find a
complaint,
way.
I can
Or
find a
make
way.
one. Find a way
Yeah,
or make one.
find a way or make one. Yeah, that's true.
That is amazing. But yes, that's why I like to let these conversations just kind of go where they go, because you never know what message that somebody has or what somebody might need to hear
Yes,
based on what you've been through, based on where you're going and the tools that you've used to get to the other side.
exactly.
So I'm grateful.
Definitely.
So it sounds like so how long are you keep doing your meetings? Are we still going? Is this expanding? What's the
Yes, I
trajectory for
am.
this?
I am still hosting them virtually because when I started doing them in person, I started doing it in my hometown just because when I started the group, a lot of the participation was coming from my hometown. So I kind of started traveling more back to my hometown to, do different activities and things like that. And that's where a lot of different, we created a lot of different events from that group. Like I said, the chain breaker came about. For kids aspect, we came up with meetings that we used to have once a month called Cook Chat Reach, where we would bring the kids in, allow them to like make different meals and things while we discuss emotions and things like that.
Nice.
And that was good for a while. We did that. And then also the mental health tea parties have lunch from the chain breaker lunches. So this is the third third one. Yes, it's gonna be my third one that we're gonna be having on April the 26th. So I'm having it in my hometown. And normally we just have people to come in and they speak on how your mental health affects your physical, how mental health can affect your finances, how mental health can affect your spiritual side. So we normally have individuals just come in and speak on that, have everybody to dress up nice. We do my Camila is one of my team members that does it with me, and she has a business called Look Good, Be Great. So we incorporate that as well. That you want to dress up to show how well your mental health status is, and this is kind of what we deal with the mental health tea party. So again, I say I'm looking to expand. When it comes down to the chain breaker lunches, I normally just make a flyer and I post it. Again, it's a free online platform, so I never really know from one meeting to the other how many people are going to join, what the conversations are going to lead to. It's just kind of like an open platform, like you said. You normally just let your guests just come in and talk. So if
Mm-hmm.
someone has something that they want to discuss, we kind of just discuss that and go on. Sometimes I will create a topic, but if we get off topic, it's not something I too much care about. So I definitely plan on continuing to continue doing that. Definitely expanding into the mental health realm, getting more opportunities just to be able to speak. I would love to be able to start hosting those meetings here on the coast. I've hosted a few here, about three or four. Also, I've been looking into kind of making connections with people in other states to possibly host some in another state. So those are some things that I've really just kind of been praying to God about allowing the expansion of it, just because again I'm so passionate about mental health, and I just feel like that there are so many people out there that need the help, but they're afraid to ask, or either they just don't know where to go, the resources or things to lean on. But seeing people go from broken to heal is an amazing thing to me. So one of the things that I always say in the chain breaker luncheon, because when I was growing up, I would always hear people say that hurt people hurt people. So since I have gotten on this journey, my quote is, if hurt people can hurt people, then heal people can heal people. And so again, it just goes back to what my pastor said, that when God blesses you, you reach back and you bless somebody else. So I just want to keep reaching back and paying it forward to people that I meet. And so therefore I just tell God to use me, to allow me to be a vessel of him. I know that I'm not perfect, but every day I ask him to, step inside me and allow him to be seen through me. And so that's the best way I feel like I can honor him, and I can honor myself in the growth that I've obtained, is just try to every day just wake up and just try to be the best that you can. Now some days some days it don't go good, and I have to go sit down and talk to God like, Lord, I'm sorry. Cause I know I could have stopped like right there in that story. I should have jumped in and pulled that scripture in, and I went off the deep end. But come on back over here. Let me apologize. Come on back in here, get me right. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with him getting me right. I'm okay with him setting me straight. I'm okay with him putting me in my place, because I want him to do whatever he needs to do as long as he don't leave me.
Amen to that. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your
You're
wisdom
welcome.
and your word, because somebody somewhere is going to need it.
Yes,
And
I
I hope that you
definitely appreciate
continue
the
to do great
opportunity.
things in your mental health space and keep helping people and pushing people into the spaces and the energy that they need to be in to heal. And when should we expect another book?
I am looking for my book. It's called Mama's Babies. Like I said, everything that I do is going to again tie into, the mental health realm. So now that I've got the devotional out the way, the next one that is coming up is called Mama's Babies. Um, this book for me is again very personal. Again, when I tell you, my girlfriend has honestly come into my life and really motivated me to stand up in my truth, to put my work out there. Mama's Baby actually was just a small little short story insert that I wrote. And she read that and she said, this needs to be a book. And then once you make it a book, it's going to be a play. And so what it talks about is from a child standpoint, how we internalize the things that we see in our environment as we grow up. So it speaks from children's standpoint of being in a household where some of the children's characteristics they were present in the household during a murder. And so it speaks to what this did to them, how they internalized it. One of the girls in the characters in the story has been sexually assaulted by a mom's boyfriend. So it pretty much just speaks to in those moments when kids are being raised and we're thinking that they're just children. They don't understand, they don't see this, they won't remember that. It speaks to what is going on to those children when we as the adults, as the parents, are thinking that they're not being affected. So these kids are talking about the effect of what being in these environments and what enduring these type of things have done to them mentally and how they feel about the world as a whole with these type of traumas on them. So I'm very excited for this book to come out. I am going to write it as a two-part form. So it is going to be a second book to follow that. But yeah, and so I've utilized the names Hope, Faith, Miracle. These are the names of my characters. Again, I'm always just trying to find a way to, in everything that I write, find a way to reach people, find a way to tie God into it. So that's the reason why I gave my character names such as Grace, such as Faith, Harmony, Miracle, Hope. So those are the names of some of the characters in the book. And again, like right now, it's in the editing phases. I actually had got it edited, and then I'm such a critique on myself. So I read the book, and then I'm like, I want to make more edits. So I so I sent it back to be re-edited, and now I'm waiting on to get it returned again. So again, be looking for that. I think by the end of next month, I should have it available. So the Sun and the Moon is available on Amazon, and I'll have that available as well on Amazon. Or they can check on my website, sunshinemlewis.com. And it also has access to for my books as well. So I'll put it up on there as well. And then I have Princesses Don't Get Whoopings that I'm working on. This book is based off my me as a parent, the things that I've endured as a parent. And I got that title from when my daughter was about 3 years old. I remember she told me one day, I'm a princess. I don't get whoopings. So this is pretty much based off everything. It's pretty much based off how people think and their perceptions of things. So because we gave her everything and she was spoiled and she can get whatever she want when she was bad in school that day, she thought that was gonna be excused because she's the princess. She gets anything she wants. So when I told her I was gonna get her a whipping, that's what her response. Princesses don't get whippings. So that book is gonna be talking about pretty much the butt whippings that I have been getting as a parent trying to raise my children as a single mom. So that's what that one is going to be about. And the other one that I'm working on is called 2 cents No Change.
Hmm.
You know how people are always talking about you put your 2 cents in it. So 2
Mm-hmm.
Cents No Change is again another book that's going to be talking some about my life. But except on this one, it's also going to have questions and reflection questions for the readers. They're going to be reading about my life. They're going to get the chance to have questions that pretty much ask them, how would you have dealt with this situation, or what do you get out of this part of my story? And so,
Nice.
so those are the books that I'm working on right now.
That is awesome, and I can't wait to read. The one you just said that you're waiting to get edited, I
Uh-huh.
want to read that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I will be looking for that, seriously, and I'm gonna order a copy because, like,
Okay.
your concepts and the way that your mind works is so intriguing. Like, I feel like I'm gonna fall into this, and I like to read. I'm always looking for stuff to read. So
Yes. Well, I
if I
pray
can
that
support, I absolutely will.
yes, and I definitely when I get it ready, I'll even send you an email to let you know that it's ready for ordering. So I would love for you to take a read into it and let me know what you think.
Wonderful. I definitely will. Well, thank you again. I won't hold you. I know it's Monday night and we've got momming to do, so I will let you go. But thank you again. Like I said, I really appreciate it. This has been a great conversation, and I'm sure somebody will be able to take something valuable away from it.
Yes. So you have a blessed night and thank you again.
Thanks so much.